Some called him crazy, others called him a fool. But the truth was simple. While everyone else was playing checkers, he was playing master-level chess. Donald Trump understood a secret that traditional politicians never learned. Global power is not just about quiet meetings behind closed doors. It is about dominance in front of the cameras. He used strong body language, bold mind games, and direct call-outs to break diplomatic rules and bend world leaders to his will. Before we look at these moments, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Now, let's watch 10 legendary moves that showed his brilliant strategy. One, the aggressive Yank-and-Shake handshake technique. Early in his presidency, Donald Trump gained international attention for his unique physical handshake. During in-person greetings with world leaders, he frequently grabbed her hand, pulled her forcefully towards his chest, and held their hand for an extended period. For instance, during a 2017 visit to the White House by Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, President Trump held his hand for 19 seconds while patting the back of Abe's hand. When the handshake concluded, Prime Minister Abe was captured on camera displaying a lot of relief. President Trump used a similar pulling gesture during greetings with various of other foreign diplomats and officials. Supporters argue that this physical style was a deliberate power move designed to disorient foreign leaders and establish political authority immediately upon meeting. Critics argued that the aggressive handshake was awkward, overly physical, and unsuited for formal diplomatic encounters. 2. The public Oval Office confrontation with Volodymyr Zelenskyy. During a September 2019 meeting in the Oval Office, President Trump met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, while dozens of journalists and news cameras were present.
Do whatever he can. This was not his fault. He wasn't there. He's just been here recently.
Rather than holding a standard private discussion, President Trump used to leave media availability to address sensitive political topics directly.
Мене немає. Дякую. Я вам відповім. Зобов'язаним що?
Obligated to do what?
He publicly pressed President Zelenskyy regarding domestic political investigations, anti-corruption measures, and European financial assistance. During the interaction, President Trump repeatedly pointed out that European nations were not proving enough financial support to Ukraine compared to the United States. He urged President Zelenskyy to resolve regional disputes directly and publicly raised expectations for Ukrainian policy. Supporters maintained that this direct exchange demonstrated complete transparency and showed the public that American financial aid was tied to accountability. Critics argue that confronting a foreign leader publicly in front of international reporters put unnecessary pressure on an ally during a critical moment. 3. Physically moving past the Prime Minister of Montenegro at NATO. At the May 2017 NATO headquarters summit in Brussels, world leaders gathered for a group photograph and tour for the new building. As the leaders walked together through the facility, President Trump approached the group from behind. He placed his hand firmly on the arm of Dasko Markovic, the Prime Minister of Montenegro, and physically pushed past to him to reach the front row of the gathering. Once he reached the front position, President Trump adjusted his jacket, held his head high, and stood prominently in front of the assembled cameras. The video clip of the interaction went viral on global media platforms. Supporters view this action as an assertive statement that the United States would always take the lead position at international summits. Critics view the physical push as disrespectful towards the leader of a sovereign nation and a violation of basic international manners. 4. Tossing Starburst candies to Angela Merkel at the G7 summit. During a tense closed-door session at the June 2018 G7 summit in Quebec, Canada, world leaders engaged in heated negotiations regarding international trade tariffs. According to diplomatic accounts from participants present in the room, German Chancellor Angela Merkel and the other European leaders were surrounding President Trump to press him on trade policies. At the point during the tense discussion, President Trump reached into his pocket and pulled on 2 Starburst fruit candies. He tossed the candies across the negotiation table towards Chancellor Merkel and reportedly started, "Here, Angela, don't say I never give you anything." Supporters view this gesture as a humorous and confident display of supreme leverage during high-stake economic talks. Critics argue that tossing candy across a formal negotiation table was dismissive and disrespectful towards a long-serving head of government. 5. Declining the public handshake request with Angela Merkel. In March 2017, German Chancellor Angela Merkel visited the White House for the first official meeting with President Trump. Following their private discussions, the 2 leaders sat side by side in chairs in the Oval Office for a traditional photo opportunity. As news photographers took pictures, reporters repeatedly shouted, "Handshake! Handshake!" requesting that the leaders shake hands for the camera.
Handshake? Okay. Thank you, fellas.
Chancellor Merkel leans towards President Trump and asking quietly, "Do you want to have a handshake?" President Trump remained seated, leaning forward with his hands clasped tightly between his knees, looked straight ahead at the cameras without acknowledging the request of making eye contact. Supporters suggest that President Trump chose not to engage in a staged photo gesture due to ongoing policy disagreements regarding European immigration and trade. Critics maintain that ignoring and visiting leaders' polite requests for a standard handshake in Oval Office was a notable breath of hospitality. 6. Publicly lecturing NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg over breakfast. During the July 2018 NATO summit in Brussels, President Trump attended for working breakfast with NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg. With television cameras rolling and reporters present, President Trump immediately initiated a harsh critique of European defense policy. He focused specifically on Germany, asserting that the country is totally controlled by Russia due to its financial reliance on Russian natural gas imports via the Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
They won't write that. No, I have said it before, but the thing is that it really has, your message is having an.
While Secretary General Stoltenberg attempted to maintain a diplomatic tone and emphasize alliance unity, President Trump repeatedly interrupted, questioning why the United States should protect nations that purchase energy from potential rivals. Supporters praised this confrontation breakfast meeting as a masterclass in direct, unscripted negotiation that exposed European economic contradictions. Critics argue that berating the NATO chief publicly over breakfast weakened alliance cohesion and created public division among member states. 7. Maintaining assertive body language at the 2018 G7 summit. The June 2018 G7 summit in Canada produced one of the most famous news photographs of modern political history, taken by photographer Jessica Denzel. In the image, German Chancellor Angela Merkel stands over a table, leaning forward with planted firmly on the wood, surrounded by French President Emmanuel Macron and other world leaders. Sitting on the opposite side of the table, President Trump sits back in his chair and his arms folded tightly across his chest, looking directly up at Chancellor Merkel with a firm, unyielding expression. The image visually captured a dramatic face-to-face standoff over international trade tariffs. Supporters argue that President Trump's posture conveyed absolute confidence, composure, and refusal to yield under group pressure from foreign leaders. Critics argue that the defense body language illustrated American isolation from traditional global partners. 8. Engaging in the White-Knuckle handshake standoff with Emmanuel Macron. In May 2017, President Trump met newly elected French President Emmanuel Macron for the first time at the United States Embassy in Brussels. As two leaders sat before news cameras, They engaged in an unusually firm and prolonged handshake. Both men gripped each other's hands with immense force, causing their knuckles to turn white and their jaws to clench. Neither leader released for the grip for several seconds, transforming a standard greeting into an obvious physical test of resolve. Later, President Macron admitted to reporters that the handshake was not innocent and was intended as a deliberate moment of physical firmness. President Trump later engaged in similar intense handshakes with Macron at subsequent summits, including a notable pulling gesture at the 2017 Bastille Day celebrations. Supporters viewed these handshake standoffs as an entertaining demonstration of physical competition between world leaders. Critics argue that converting diplomatic greetings into physical contest reduces serious international diplomacy to personal posturing. 9. Walking across to the demilitarized zone to meet Kim Jong-un. In June 2019, President Trump visited the military zone separating North and South Korea. During an unscripted, highly publicized moment, he met North Korean leader Kim Jong-un at the borderline. As television cameras broadcast live around the world, President Trump walked up to the concrete border marker, shook hands with Kim Jong-un, and then physically stepped across the border into the North Korean territory. By doing so, he became the first sitting United States president to set foot in North Korea. After taking several steps alongside Kim Jong-un on North Korean soil, President Trump patted the North Korean leader on the shoulder and guided him back across the line into South Korea for further talks. Supporters praised this physical step across the border as a bold, historic gesture that broke decades of rigid diplomatic stagnation. Critics argue that stepping across the border provided a major propaganda victory for the North Korean regime without setting binding nuclear concessions. 10. Holding hands and guiding British Prime Minister Theresa May. In January 2017, British Prime Minister Theresa May became the first foreign leader to visit President Trump and the White House following his inauguration. As the two leaders worked together down the outdoor White House colonnade towards joint press conference, President Trump reached out and took Prime Minister May's hand. Cameras captured them walking hand in hand along the pathway, with President Trump briefly patting her hand as they approached a small set of steps. Official explanations later stated that President Trump offered his hand to assist as they walked down a slight incline. Supporters viewed this physical gesture as a warm, personal display of a close relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom. Critics view the hand-holding as an unusual departure from professional diplomatic decorum that placed the visiting prime minister as an unexpectedly intimate physical dynamic. These 10 specific encounters highlight how Donald Trump's diplomatic strategy relies heavily on direct, face-to-face personal interactions and physical presence. Whether through firm handshakes, public global confrontations on unscripted body language, his physical posture during international meetings frequently made news headlines around the world. As he serves his current presidency, this personal approach to foreign relations remains a defining feature of his leadership style. Supporters view these face-to-face power moves as effective demonstrations of strength that force foreign counterparts to react to American initiatives. Critics maintain that using physical dominance tactic and public confrontations risk damaging personal trust with long-standing foreign allies. Regardless of perspective, these memorable personal interactions demonstrate how individual body language and direct face-to-face encounters can shape global diplomatic perception. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications and like the video. See you in the next video.